I'm going to be making an easy 2-ingredient pumpkin bread with a homemade cinnamon icing. And I'll show you the video of this recipe that I did last year. This is going to be good. Let's make 2-ingredient pumpkin bread. You'll want to make sure you use a 15-ounce can of pumpkin puree. I'm also going to be using a spice cake mix. You'll want to start by preheating your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. So I've added all of my pumpkin puree into my mixing bowl. Now just to add the entire bag or box of cake mix. Mix until everything is combined. Prep my loaf pan and spray it with some cooking oil and add the parchment paper. Just one-handed. There we go. This is just for garnish on top. Oats, super seed blend. So going into my preheated oven. So I used a smaller loaf pan. This is an 8x4 or 8x5. So this took about 40 minutes. It smells amazing. Look at that. Remove it from the pan. Now you'll want to give it a slice and enjoy. Okay, so today I'm making that 2-ingredient pumpkin bread, and I'm starting with a 15-ounce can of pure pumpkin puree. This is not the pumpkin pie puree, this is just pumpkin. And a box of spice cake mix. This has cinnamon, nutmeg, and allspice in it. It goes great with pumpkin. Okay, so here I'm working with an 8x4 loaf pan. If you have like a 9x5, that also works. The cook time might be less. So I put parchment paper in this, and this is ready to go. So in my bowl, I've added all of that pumpkin puree, and now I'm going to empty the contents of the cake mix bag. Thankfully, the weather has cooled off a bit. Now, it's not completely cool in Texas, but it's less than 100 degrees most days, so I'm happy about that. Okay, with a fork, I'm going to combine and mix everything well. So with the weather sort of cooling off and not being over 100 degrees during the day, I kind of want to start baking to get in the fall mood. I mean, there are pumpkins at the grocery store, so there's that. So you'll want to mix this until it looks like this. Okay, so this is all combined and mixed, and it literally is 2 ingredients. So in my prepped loaf pan, I'm just going to scoop everything out into the pan. And like I said, you want to put parchment paper. Well, don't do that. But like I said, use parchment paper, or at least put some sort of like cooking oil or butter just to make sure the loaf comes out. So I'm just going to make sure I can scrape pretty much everything out of the bowl and put it right into the loaf pan. And then I'm going to just sort of smooth out the top. By the way, you'll want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And that beep lets me know that my oven is preheated. So now this is going into the oven. So the cook time will vary if you're using a bigger loaf pan, but for the one I'm using today, it takes about 40 minutes. So I want to show you a substitution for the spice cake mix if you can't find that. You could use yellow or white cake mix, and you can add a couple of teaspoons of vanilla extract. You can add a teaspoon or so of pumpkin pie spice mix or ground cinnamon. And that's a good sub if you can't find spice cake mix. Okay, so this is pretty much at the 40-minute mark, so I'm going to remove it from the oven and carefully place it down on my counter or stovetop here. And at this point, you'll want to check it with the toothpick to make sure that it's cooked through. And there should be some crumbs on the toothpick, but for the most part, this is done. And it took 40 minutes in this loaf pan. So I'm going to remove it, and this makes this job so easy with the parchment paper, and just place it here to cool. And while that cools a little bit, I will show you how I make this homemade cinnamon icing. And you really don't need to ice this. You can serve just like this. It's really good with coffee. But let me go ahead and show you this homemade icing that's easy. So here in a bowl, I already have 1.5 cups of powdered sugar or confectioner sugar. And to that, I am going to add a pinch of salt. And literally less than 1/4 teaspoon works for this. I'm going to mix that up and kind of get rid of some of the clumps in the powdered sugar. I'm just going to take this little whisk and mix it around and break up any lumps that I see in the bowl. Here I'm going to add a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And I'm also going to add a little bit of, this is actually table cream, but you could use heavy cream. I just have a jar of this Mexican table cream, and I'm going to use like a tablespoon and start working everything into the powdered sugar. And you want to start little by little with the liquid ingredients. I'm also going to shake in some ground cinnamon, like a 1/4 teaspoon works for this. If you want more, go for it. Give that a mix. Here, I'm going to add a tablespoon of water. This is cold water going in. And you could essentially just add heavy cream or the table cream that I'm using, but I wanted to just sort of loosen it up with a little bit of water. And here I'm going to add another tablespoon of that table cream or heavy cream, and that should do the trick to getting this icing mixed and combined together. Okay, I'm going to set this aside, and what I'm going to do is, here I have my cooled loaf. This is my pumpkin loaf or bread, and it's still sort of warm, and it's the perfect temperature to add this icing. The warmth will sort of get this thick icing to sort of get melty and sort of drip all over the top, and then let it set for about 15 to 20 minutes if you can help it. I have someone that wants a slice already.
It's almost done.
So this has set for about 10 minutes. I think it's good enough. My little one wants a slice already. So I'm just going to take a knife and slice right into it. It's as easy as that. And you can see the icing has already somewhat set, and it kind of has that snap on the exterior. It's so good. And it's very tender and moist on the inside of this 2-ingredient pumpkin loaf with icing. Okay, so I hope you give this recipe a try. I hope you like it. And happy fall baking. Thanks for watching.